welcome to our discussion about the lists.
Sean is here with me today to also give his input and give you his top 10.
I don't mean this. I mean books in our list, in our vlog. I misspoke slightly.
It's fine. They know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Okay. Shall we go through order that we read them?
Yes. So we'll start off with Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson.
Okay. This is a reread.
Reread. Second book in a series. Starts off with Good Girl's Guide to Murder.
So I don't think it should be eligible because it's the second book in the series, even though it's a standalone story.
So in the rules, sequels are eligible as long as they can stand on their own. And I think that this one's the perfect example of why sequels should be allowed, because it does stand on its own really well. It gives you enough information about the previous book that you don't feel completely lost. And it is a self-contained mystery story.
Okay.
So compared to last year, we had Crossfire by Mallory Blackman on there. That was not a complete story. That ends on a massive cliffhanger, and I feel like you don't really get the full impact of it without reading the rest of the series. So I'm a bit confused on why that was on the shortlist last year. That was my concern about Good Girl, Bad Blood this year, but I do think it works well by itself.
I think I enjoyed it more on a reread.
I feel the same. I still don't think it's as good as the first one.
No, not as good as the first one, I don't think, but picked up on a lot more little references whilst rereading, which is fun.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same. I also think that there's hints towards book 3 in there. We obviously won't know that until it comes out, which is in August. But there's a couple of mentions that make me feel as though I know where book 3 is going to go. And there is also a direct quote from the synopsis of book 3 in Good Girl, Bad Blood, which we wouldn't have picked up on when we first read it because the synopsis for As Good as Dead was not revealed at that point. So that was very fun.
Yeah. So now we've got... we won't do our ratings at the end when we have the big list.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'll kind of give it away.
That's true.
Where they might be placed.
So, is there anything else you want to say about it? Like, have you got any complaints? Have you got any other bits that you liked? I just love these characters. Like, I would follow them to the ends of the earth, if I'm honest. It's a really good cast.
Like when we did it earlier and talked about it earlier, like, I'm not a huge fan of the true life podcast genre as a whole. Like, not just in books, in, like, real life. Because it's just kind of... It can meddle where things they shouldn't really be meddling because it's just amateurs not understanding things fully.
Yeah.
I think it does quite a good approach to it, and it's about a case that has already happened and concluded, which I think is the really important bit, and which makes it a bit.
But then it's not really, because they do follow the court case as it's ongoing.
Yeah.
And they have to use, like, there's a discussion about saying allegedly because you have to be careful with the journalistic integrity and not making statements that are yet to be confirmed in court. So that's, from a journalism perspective, it's fascinating looking at that. But then also that's one of the reasons you don't like the podcasts, because some people don't follow those rules, and then it...
A lot of people won't follow those.
Yeah, like, gets into the grey area. Murky.
So, book 2?
Should we move on to book 2? Okay, so book 2 was And the Stars Are Burning Brightly by Danielle Joando. This was a reread for me, first time reading for Sean.
I really like this.
Yeah.
It wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be based on what Alyce gave the description of it before she read it the first time and after she read it the first time.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, like, I just... Like, you skipped a lot because obviously you just gave me, like, a 2-line description of it both times.
Yes. I did do that.
Yeah.
It's difficult to sum this one up because there is so much that it's focused on. There are focuses on cyberbullying, there's focuses on physical bullying, there's focuses on suicide and the way that it impacts people, and grief and friendship and the meaning of friendship, and I don't know, there's a lot going on in it.
And possibly a bit bloated in parts.
Yeah, I do worry whether there's just slightly too much. This also makes me wonder why there's going to be a sequel, because I feel like there's so much content in book 1 that book 1 could already be broken down a bit further. So I don't know what's going to come into the sequel.
Maybe like 50 to 100 pages more, so it could, because some bits they're sort of glossed over a couple times, like they're referenced, but it's like on this thing, and it comes, oh yeah, that thing is still there, or that thing's still there, like, But actually tell me about that thing fully would be quite nice.
And also, I just really like Danielle Joando's writing, so I would have happily read more from her. Like, the fact that this is her debut really annoys me, because as soon as I finished it, I just wanted to read more of her work. And I experienced that the first time around, which is why I was really excited about rereading it. And then I felt exactly the same second time around. I was like, oh, I just want another one already. So that's really promising.
Yeah.
Definitely a promising start to a career.
Yeah.
Book 3?
Yeah, book 3.
Book 3 was, where I have to start racking my brain, The Great Godden by Meg Rossoff.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. This was
Unenjoyable?
I mean, it wasn't unenjoyable. It was just such a nothing burger of a book.
A nothing burger.
You know? That's how we measure things. That's how they measure things in America, by burgers.
Burger.
Like, you just like, you think you're going to get something really nice, you're just like, oh, this is actually not.
It's just bun. There's no filling.
Yeah, it's not even
There's
like.
nothing
It's
enjoyable.
not even
Dry.
like. It's like, yeah, it's not even. There's just. You have like these, like, you see those pictures of like McDonald's burgers on like adverts and they're absolutely amazing, and you get it, it's just like a slapped together and all smushed. It kind of felt like that. Mm-hmm. Because I heard a lot of people talking about this before we read it, looking at the reviews. And there's lots of people like, oh, this thing is really good, and this thing's really good. But reading it, you're like, well, that's not really happening. I don't know if we're going to spoilers or not.
Yeah, we're going to do spoilers, because I've already gone spoilery earlier on. Yeah,
so there's a bit where the main narrator isn't named or gendered. And everyone is, well, a lot of people are like, oh, they're androgynous or asexual.
It's meant to be just completely ambiguous, so
ambiguous,
that you
that's
can
the
put
word.
yourself into it.
But as a guy, it completely read like a female character. I saw no male anything in it.
As a female, it also read as a female character. It was, I will link it down in the description, Kai's review on Goodreads was the one that I spotted while we were reading it that mentioned the fact that it was a non-gendered protagonist. It wasn't until that point that it properly twigged to me. I knew the protagonist didn't have a name. I hadn't realised that there wasn't a gender. And I made a conscious effort after learning that to read it with the male viewpoint in mind. And it just still felt very, very feminine.
There was no...
The responses to some of the actions, the way that the other characters talk about them, calling them like darling and sweetheart and stuff. I don't know many adults who do talk to millennials, especially older teenage boys, that way.
I always thought it was really weird, like, you can kind of, or I personally could tell that it felt they'd gone back and edited out all the like references to their actual name and replaced them with sweetie and darling and like their gender, and it just
so like it was a decision late in the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like they wrote well, that's really good, but like, oh, this is like a popular trendy thing. Let me get in on that, or let me just like half-heartedly like do these things without actually getting more input from people that's more like. Bad results, but they're like trying to get. What's the word? Is it own voices? That's the word that people use.
I don't think that is what you're trying to use in this respect.
Sensitivity reads. I don't know the words, but like trying to get more people that you're trying to represent in the story to critique it early on.
Yeah, but then in my opinion, if you're trying to do something like this, it's very difficult because the author's gonna have that picture in their mind of the character that they're writing. So there's not even an easy way to say like, oh, I want people from this background. Like if Meg Rossoff was trying to write it with an androgynous character or a agendered character, someone who, I'm not quite sure on the correct terminology, but someone who presents as male one day, female the other day. If Meg Rossoff was genuinely trying to write it in that way, it would have been very interesting if there had been some chapters that were more male codified language, some chapters that were more female codified language. But it all just felt very feminine. And I don't know if that's what you're trying to say, that if you've
100%.
got more people like that on board earlier in the process, then it might have been possible to show the differences between the days and the way that people's attitudes kind of change day to day, and if that affects how they are presenting their gender that day. Non-binary? Non-binary is what I think I'm trying to go
Gender
for.
fluid?
Gender fluid.
One of those two terms.
Even if you had any people from those kind of backgrounds represented early on in the process, then it might have felt more realistic, but it just doesn't feel very realistic to me.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it just feels like sort of a last-minute addition.
On the plus side, the fact that it does have that writing style does make it feel like almost literary fiction. So it will have a wider appeal than most YA.
I thought it was literary fiction rather than a YA.
It does. I can see why it was shortlisted. I don't know if it won the Costa Book Prize. It was shortlisted for the Costa Book Prize, definitely. It's been up for the Carnegie as well, I think. So this one is going to appeal to adult readers. It's going to appeal to reluctant readers. If you like The Great Gatsby, I would recommend picking it up because I get a lot of vibes from that.
I would not. I would just recommend picking up The Great Gatsby.
I mean, if you've read that and you don't want to reread it, I also get some Catcher in the Rye vibes, which is a bit weird. I'm not quite sure where they're coming from, but the kind of sarcastic nature of the protagonist.
I think that's why it rubbed me up the wrong way with the character, because obviously they're trying to get other like semi like arrogantness vibes from I can't remember, the Catcher in the Rye guy and Gatsby,
or Holden Caulfield.
Yeah, Holden Caulfield and Gatsby, but without going hard into the male charisma type thing. It doesn't work. Like that doesn't work as a YA in this way.
It also comes across as very anti-feminist because if it is, as I said, I read it as a feminine main character, and they're very disrespectful towards their sister. So there's lots of language about the sister experiences heartbreak. And they're like, oh, she's lost so much weight, she's ugly now. Oh, she looks really horrible because she's, like, really gaunt and unhealthy. And, oh, I'm glad that she's not the hot one anymore. Like, not direct quotes, but paraphrasing, that's what's implied. And that's not a healthy attitude to have, and I think that that's really harmful in YA.
See, that made me think, like, is it set in modern times, or is it set in the past? That I got really confusing was, like, the way you describe other characters. It's like, these are not modern terms that young people would use. These are sort of terms from like 70s, 60s, 70s that just got really confusing.
I'm wondering if it was meant to be set in the past but written in the modern day, as though it was somebody who is in like their 50s, 60s now reminiscing about the summer from their childhood, because there were references towards Instagram, like, oh, she was walking along the beach like she was trying to be an Instagram model. Like, you could say that now about somebody that you'd seen 30 years ago, even if Instagram didn't exist at the time. It doesn't feel modern to me, but I'm wondering whether it's something like that, because there is a drastic disconnect between the kind of voice and the time period that's implied.
I think that's another thing that also got the Instagram thing that sort of feels late minute adding the shoehorn it, like trying to get on. It doesn't feel like it was complete and it was written with the end goal in mind. It feels like it was written with a different end goal in mind.
Also, I'm not a fan of the greedy bisexual trope, and the fact that there is a bisexual character in here who is like, they don't care about cheating, they don't care about destroying relationships, they don't really have any kind of emotions, they're just shagging everybody they can see, really, and I hate that trope. So that was like the final nail in the coffin for me. I wasn't enjoying it, but I didn't think it was bad, and then that comes in quite late in the story and it just completely ruined the entire thing for me. I was appreciating the writing style until that point. Funny thing is, I've read 2 of Meg Rossof's other books. In one of them I hated the characters, in one of them I hated the writing style, and in this one I just kind of hated the plot because there wasn't really a plot. So 3 of her books, and I've disliked something different about each one. So I'm not sure I'm going to read any more of hers.
I wonder if you read those other books, like the one that you hated, the writing style was fixed, would you hate it for the characters still? But because the writing
style was so bad,
you overlooked the other bad things about the book.
Yeah, this was the one when it got announced that I was very hesitant about, because I knew I'd already disliked 2 of Meg Rossof's books. So I'm not surprised that I don't have fond feelings towards this one, but I'm surprised by how much we've managed to rant about it.
Book number 4.
King Warriors by Alex Wheatle.
Yeah.
Historical. Set in Jamaica. Which is
Jamaica?
Yes.
Okay.
It was set in Taki's War in Jamaica.
Yes, it was.
And I have never read anything set in Jamaica before, so I enjoyed the setting. I don't really like historical, but I thought that this had a great story.
It had a great story. I think it could have done with being a lot longer.
Yes, it felt like the middle of a longer story.
Yes, very much.
Felt like a sample, which was strange.
Yeah, or like, if you're gonna write like a series of novellas, like you've sort of started with like book 2.5, So there's like a lot of stuff that will be really interesting to read earlier on, and lots of after that'd be really interesting to read.
Yeah, it was jam-packed from beginning to end. The plot was unstoppable. But there are a lot of named character deaths because this is in a world... Well, this is a retelling of a historical event where slaves rose up against their masters and they kind of tried to reclaim their freedom by killing the masters. And because there are so many named character deaths, it would have been nicer if we'd had more of that kind of building the world up at the beginning so that we cared about them a bit more, because some of these characters are literally mentioned once, they appear on the page once, and then they die. And our protagonist is really torn up about it because they've grown up with them, they've lived their whole lives with them, but as a reader, you don't have that same emotional connection because you haven't seen them before.
There's no sort of stakes with the events that are happening because, like you said, like there's no build-up. It's like all these characters are like, why would you mention them once or twice in a couple of lines? Like, I don't have any connection. I don't really care about them.
Yeah, which was a shame because I think that it's brilliant. I'd never heard of Takis War before, and I think the fact that Alex Wheatle chose to shine a light on such a underrepresented historical event was brilliant. But it's a bit too short for me.
I think I have a pirate book somewhere that goes into it a bit.
Yeah.
And then do like a big chunky boy.
Okay.
Pirates are cool. Pirates are cool.
Pirates
so
are
obviously,
cool.
like, you know, pirates and slaves were sent like mutual allies. Friend, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
So like that's a lot of these things like I do have a bit about, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think I liked it more than I think you liked it because.
Well, I liked it for Alex Wheatle. I
liked it for different reasons that you liked it, but we still liked it.
But also, I liked the fact that the vocabulary was non-standard spellings, so you really got a very strong sense of voice. That was brilliant, and I think I'd like to give the audiobook of this one a go if there is an audiobook of this one, because I think it would be... I just think it would be brilliant.
I'm interested in reading his other books, because he has a series?
Yeah, it's companion books called the Crompton series, and I would be interested in rereading them, so we will do those eventually. I haven't finished the last one yet, but I'd like to
finish them all.
Yeah, I'd like to reread those because those are great.
Yeah.
Book 5, which is 8 Pieces of Silver by Patrice Lawrence.
Yeah. This one was hard for me because it felt very similar to In the Stars Are Burning Brightly in parts.
Okay.
Yeah. So like in my head, it took a lot of time to separate those two out.
Because of the sibling relationship?
Yeah.
Okay. I can get that.
I think that was part of it.
Okay, yeah. I'm just, in my head, I'm just trying to like slam the two together and see. But then obviously where I read them, I could get more of the differences that way. Because there's some non-standard spellings in And the Stars Are Burning Brightly as well, because where it's set in Manchester, you get a very strong sense of the voice when you're reading it on the page. But I don't know if you would have gotten that where I was reading it out to you.
Yeah.
So I think that's why, for me, they're much more separate. But I can get where you're coming from. Anything else?
I felt that some parts of the relationship between the sister Silva and the partner's brother, the one that owned the boxing gym.
Yes.
I felt some of that relationship just felt
Kurt?
That felt really strong. That felt really strange. Like it just didn't feel like any of those interactions would happen with real people.
Okay.
I don't know if it's because I don't have any of that, like, that wouldn't happen with me. That's not how I would interact with anyone. But
you just couldn't relate.
It just felt so, like, out of place. Like, it literally felt like that meme was a guy, and he has a skateboard, and it has, like, band music, and he goes, "What's up, fellow teens?"
Okay, yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Because of how he was, like, a bit older, you thought that his interactions with them didn't feel as authentic because of that kind of discrepancy. Okay, yeah, I can get that.
I think that's because it sort of made Silva feel, instead of a teenager, to more like a mid-30s, and then like back at just her sense of voice was quite strange and quite inconsistent for
Yeah,
me.
no, I can get that, because obviously she was very different when she was with her friends as well, but then I don't know whether that's just exploring the way that teenagers can adapt it to these different situations. So she's learning to meet her biological dad for the first time, and she's learning her relationship with him. She's trying to help her sister, so she's learning how to kind of withhold her, because she's quite an impulsive person.
Yeah.
So she's like trying to withhold that to be able to help her sister more effectively. So I can kind of get where you're coming from. I can kind of understand why it was written that way.
Okay.
As well.
Okay. Maybe it translates better if you're actually reading it on the page with the words.
So one thing I did really like about 8 Pieces of Silver is the fact that Patrice Lawrence always gives her characters really strong hobbies and strong senses of character. Again, this is something Shaw wouldn't really know because he hasn't read her other novels. But as somebody who has read her other novels, it's something that comes through very strongly. In each of her books, her protagonist has a very individual personality. So in this one, I've forgotten her name.
The narrator.
Silva's sister, yeah, the narrator. I just can't remember her name at all.
Was it Katie?
No. We've read too many books this month, quite clearly. But in 8 Pieces of Silver, the narrator is very obsessed with K-pop, and they love Black Panther, and those fandom things are very much that it's so intrinsically linked into the characters' personalities. So those fandom things are so important to them that it makes the characters much more realistic to me.
But I think because the character, there's like such a huge, the fandom, it generally feels like her character, her personality is like, I am my mother's daughter, my father left me, and my mum marrying someone new, and then I'm a stan of K-pop, I'm a stan of Black Panther, and it's like, there are other things to fill up a character than just having you're obsessive with the fandoms.
But then I think as someone who found that my music was like all I really wanted to talk about, it was like my entire personality, and like, I mean, we now do a booktube channel because books are basically my entire personality. I've got a very obsessive personality type, so I think it feels more realistic to me having a character who has such an interest in these things that it is like the only thing they really want to talk about.
I think it's as a guy, I don't know if it's just as me as a guy or my experience or anything, but it just felt really disingenuous. It didn't feel like you had a complete character.
Okay.
Because like I was never like anyone that was really like that and was obsessively about a thing that was like their whole personality.
Okay, that was basically me and all of my female friends, so I think that might be like a gender disconnect there.
Because we've had that in other books before.
Yeah.
What I felt characters, it's borderline on like an unhealthy obsession.
And I've really loved it.
Yeah, and I've been like, oh, like, this is really weird, and you're like, no, this is how it happens. And I'm like, what? This seems really like.
You are totally thinking of First Day of My Life, Lisa Williamson.
Probably.
With the like really obsessive, intense female friendship.
Yeah,
You were like, this is so unhealthy. I was I love it.
It's like this is like a borderline textbook codependent, unhealthy lifestyle thing. And yeah, you're just like, I love this. This is like so authentic to my life. I'm like, it must just be something.
Just the gender disconnect.
Yeah, something completely different between us.
What I will say is that is one of the things I love about Patrice Lawrence's writing the most, and I don't think I've ever rated any of her books more than 4 stars. I've always got a problem with at least one aspect of the story, whether it's the plot, whether it's the conclusion, whether it's the middle, but they all stick so vibrantly in my mind because of the fact that she gives her characters these really interesting personality traits. So she's simultaneously becoming an auto-bi author and also still somebody that I don't think I've given a 5 stars to, which is like a weird conflict, but I'm glad we got to read this one.
Yeah, it was enjoyable.
Yeah, and it was your first Patrice Lawrence book that wasn't a book day short story, so
what short story?
Snap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which was obsessed with Snapchat. So it really is a trait in all of the books.
Yeah.
Should we move on to book 6?
6.
Which is A Snowfall of Silver by Laura Wood.
I'll let you.
Okay, so I absolutely love this. I did not know that it was going to be a companion novel, but it is actually a companion novel to A Sky Painted Gold, which was on the YA Book Prize shortlist 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 2019. So I didn't realise to start with, but the main character is like, oh, I'm leaving Cornwall, I'm moving away from my family, I want to go and work in London in the theatre. And she mentions her sister's name and her mother's name, and I'm like, oh my god, these are the same characters that I already know and love. So I was absolutely over the moon. Hadn't heard anybody talking about that, and if I had, I would have pre-ordered it and read it the day it came out, because I was so over the moon. Like, I loved that.
Because our main character is I've forgotten her name again. Not her name, her thing. She's a
costume
designer for a travelling theatre group.
Yeah.
And she's like, a lot of the start of it is like, oh, I'm leaving Sleepy Cornwall, I'm going to the city, I'm running away, I had my fancy running away thing, and I'm running away, oh, they won't keep me, I'm running away, I'm running to going to the city.
I look like I'm in Oliver Twist.
I'm going to the big city to be famous in the big city. And then
exactly like that.
Basically, as soon as you get to the city, she's like, oh, I've got a job. And then you're travelling, obviously it's part of a travelling theatre group. But it's just, did you really need to go to the city to have that experience?
Isn't that just a criticism of like the whole creative industry though? Like, you have to move to London or Birmingham or Manchester to do these creative things, and then something like COVID happens and you can just work from home.
Yeah.
So you don't really need to go to those places. They just make you think you do.
But like even before that, like obviously in the book it's like, oh, I met a guy on train and he's like, oh look, I'll just like slingshot you through this through the plot and like really like help you and like get a good grip and everything, and like basically sort of semi-guide the reader.
Yeah.
Through her experience. But it's like, I don't know, because obviously with COVID and everything, you can...
Spoiler alert, this is set in the 1930s. COVID is not a part of this book.
We're
just on a tangent at the moment.
Yeah, neither is the Spanish flu or World War One, which seem a bit like... they're existing outside that bubble, which is a bit strange.
World War One? I don't know history.
No, World War One had just happened, but the Great Depression.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's existing... It's sort of ignoring those things, which is fine, because it's fiction. Mm-hmm. But even then, like, did you really need to go out to a city? Couldn't you just, like, found one in your own, like, a grassroots one in your own town?
Yeah.
Like, especially, like, nowadays, where you can, like, you don't need to go... Everyone is connected, you could just found one where you are. But like going back to the book, like forget the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
Like I think it was a really enjoyable story.
It was so cozy. It was so warm and heartwarming and lovely.
The bit when the guy is like a maniac driving through the snow and everything, and it's like, oh, that's can semi-relate to like trying to get something that's been so dead determined to get there, and you get there and like, oh, this isn't really what I was expecting. This is like a complete like I was going this way, it's like, boo! But I like the way this is going, with like the nice little cozy theatre.
They get snowed in and they have to sleep in like a theatre for a couple of nights, and it's just such a brilliant little twist. Yeah. And I don't know, like it just gave me such like happy vibes. And I think compared to all of the other books on the shortlist that are either they've got like a serious topic or they're quite issue based, this one's just like a lovely, not contemporary. It's got like contemporary vibes, obviously, but it is historical. But it's just like a little rom-com, and it's still got like a good moral at its heart. But I really enjoyed it. It was like a nice little palate cleanser. I'm glad we read this one in the middle, because you can sometimes feel like you're getting a bit bogged down when you've got all these serious things that are being discussed.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing about a shortlist like this, though, because it is shining a light on so many authors who are discussing these different subjects that are very important. But it's nice to also shine a light on an author who is writing just to give their readers joy.
I like the sort of twist at the ending where he's like, oh, I thought you would be back here 2 months ago to ask for a job. And she's like, no, I want your job. And he's like, what?
Yeah, that was very
my
cute.
job?
It's very funny.
Yeah, that was like a really nice little...
And it's all just about kind of like discovering yourself. And
yeah,
it's just good. It's just good.
It's good.
In its heart, it's just good. Book 7, Melt My Heart by Bethany Retta.
Okay. This was my least favourite book.
Ah, what? Oh my god, I didn't think it was going to be your absolute least favourite.
It wasn't quite my least favourite book.
I was to say, like, that should be Great Godden.
I mean, it was more enjoyable than Great Godden, but I still didn't think it was a particularly good book. I didn't really think it was saying very much. I
thought it was saying one heck of a lot.
Yeah? What did you think it was saying then?
Like, this is like... Okay, if we're going like that, this is my favourite.
What?
This is my favourite.
Yeah?
Yeah, of the whole thing. It's doing so much. There is something in this for everybody. There is the discussion about the fact that you don't need to go to university to be successful. You don't need to do the standard education route. You can just take your own time to discover what you want to do, and that's something that's really important for young adult readers. There's discovering your sexuality. There's thinking that you want one thing and not quite knowing, and then discovering yourself through the lens of, like, having that sudden moment of, like, oh God, am I actually in love with this person? Like, not wanting what you think you should want, but then realising and then wanting it absolutely. That's a really important discussion for young adult readers. There's just so much. Learning to love yourself through the lens of, like, the fat rep. There's the whole discussion with her and her sister and the relationship between them and, like, the conflict there. I think there's literally something in here for everybody.
I felt like it was too much. I think a lot, like, some of the other books on this list did those things much better.
I don't think they did.
So I think that's why, like, I think it's just, like, slowly dropping down, like, with other books you read. And other things, but, like, I don't know. There were some good bits. I did like the fact that it's like, oh, we don't have to go to university, because it's very much like, I want to go to university. Oh, I want to go to university. Oh, I'm freaking out university. Oh, I'm freaking out university. Like, so much of, like, the YA thing is like, about to go to university, I'm at university.
Even A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Pip is like, oh, this is my last summer before university. Yeah. Like, there's 2 other books on this list. And The Stars Are Burning Brightly. I won't get to go to university. Yeah. That's another 3 books on this list. So this is the one that's just like, no, you don't have to. Don't follow that path if that's not what's right for you. And it's important to have that for young readers.
I felt it was so close, but she's like, I don't want this. But I'm still going to go to college and do a foundation degree. I'm like, you were so close to being, like, a really good thing for me. But then you didn't quite nail the, like, going out the education system.
But then it's like going, because she wants to just create her art, and she's like, oh no, I feel like I'll have to do art history because I have to do something academic. But no, you can do the creative thing instead. And that's something that you can extrapolate. If you want to be an author, you don't need to go and study English literature. Like, you can just do, like, a little foundation course in, like, creative writing, or you can just do it yourself alongside other things. Like, you can forge and follow your own path. You don't need to do the one that everybody else is doing. Just because your sister's going to university, it doesn't mean that that's what you have to do. And I thought the kind of conversation between the sisters, where Daisy really wants to go to university together and Lily's like, oh, I just thought you couldn't wait to get rid of me. That's an important discussion for people to have, because there's times when you feel like you have to apply to the same place with your friend because that's how it's always been done.
The thing was...
Loveless again. The friends go together.
In Loveless and with 8 Pieces of Silver. Like, this weird relationship I just can't relate to. Where they're, like, obviously very, very close. I just can't relate to. I think that's why.
So that's the disconnect again.
Yeah, again, like, it just felt like it wasn't the book for me.
I didn't think I was going to like this one. I thought I was going to hate it. I was so sad that this was on here, because I've had problems with the fat rep in YA Book Prize shortlisted books before. And I was concerned that this was going to be another...
Example A, The Great Godden.
Well, yeah, I mean, not this year specifically. I'm not going to say which book that was, but there was one. I think I probably mentioned it earlier in this video, actually. But there was one where things sent me in a bad direction. And I was concerned that was going to happen again. But I love the way that this book starts, because Lily's like, I'm going to learn how to run. I'm going to go running. My sister runs, and I'm going to... Oh, actually, fuck this. I'm not going to run. I don't want to run. Like, running is not for me. And it's just like, yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to run just because your sister runs. You can just be comfortable in your own body. If you like the way that you look, you don't have to get running and completely, like, sleek chic athleisure wear. Like, you can just be like, oh, you know what? I just want to walk. That's fine.
I did like how it was, like, walk the line to, like, almost, like, oh, I'm going to, like, shame. But, like, it pulled it back. It wasn't overtly, like, really, really, like... one on the other side. That felt really quite genuine.
Yes, it was. I don't know. I just really loved it. I don't even know how to put into words how much I enjoyed this book, because it was just, the writing style was really great. It's really smooth and it feels authentic, and the characters feel realistic, and the plot. There's, like, a little subplot that I didn't enjoy because. No, not the... Well, yeah, the kind of the posters. But Lily's mum is doing online dating, and then she ends up dating one of Lily's customers, and Lily knows that they're married. She works in an ice cream stall.
Yeah, something that we both had experience with.
Yeah.
I think that was also annoying, because that didn't feel like anything like someone that had scooped ice cream before in their life.
As people who have scooped ice cream all day on hot summer days.
Several hours.
It's not the most realistic, but that's not the kind of thing that you can easily get experience of. And I think it's a cute summery addition. Like, yeah. I like the addition of it. It's very cute. I love ice cream, so I'm happy to see it in there. But there's this subplot where the married customer ends up dating Lily's mum, and it doesn't really do anything. I don't really know why it's in there still. It just doesn't seem very necessary.
I think I worked out why it's in there. It was to make our main character... It was to put her into an awkward position where she had to tell someone off. And then, obviously, telling the guy off made her... So she's like, oh, yeah, I can stop these posters now. It was a good chance for character development.
It
was like character development, but it felt forced.
Yeah.
It was good character development, but like the start of it just felt so forced and so ungenuine.
It also wasn't a surprise at all. Her mum's like, oh, I'm going to date this guy online, and I turned to Sean, I'm like, I bet it's Senor Mango Sorbet, and then like 20% later it's like, it's Senor Mango Sorbet, and I'm like, wow.
I think our names for the customers like Vanilla.
Yeah.
Strawberry.
Yeah.
Nicer.
Yeah.
Much more funny.
Yeah, but I don't know. I really did enjoy it. I do have problems with it. There is not a single book on this list this year that is 100% faultless for me.
Yeah, I think this is a lot of...
Which is an unusual experience, because normally there's at least one or two where I'm like, wow, I would not change a thing about that. I would still change things about this, but I still think it was my favourite.
Yeah. I just felt...
Sean's like, oh.
It just felt so... disconnected from reality with lots of these parts. I think they're adding up. All these small little things just made me not like it very much at all.
But it was like kind of funny. It was kind of romantic. It was kind of saying more.
I didn't think it was that funny.
Oh, see, I quite liked the humour in this one. It's like a dry sense of humour. It's not like overtly like you laugh out loud, but I cracked a smile. Like I was like, oh yeah, I quite like these jokes. I definitely think her writing style's for me. I'm looking forward to No Big Deal.
I don't think her writing style's for me at all.
Oh, that's a shame.
I felt the subplot was the posters. Also, again, like with Great Godden, it felt like to me like it was a late addition.
It didn't really do much for me.
It didn't feel like it really needed to be in there. Like I think if you had taken it out, I'm not sure it would change the story a whole lot. I
liked the way that it kind of, because these posters are homophobic and racist, and Lily's best friend is black. And... so she has to kind of decide that actually I might not take the poster down because I don't want it to look like I'm taking this homophobic poster down because I am like part of the LGBTQ community. There's this scene where she's walking with her sister and she's like, I can't take the poster down because my sister will ask questions that will make me feel uncomfortable. But then she realises how uncomfortable the poster's making her best friend, and that's when she's like, actually, you know what, I'm going to take these posters down. I don't care who sees me, I'm going to stand up for my friend. And I think it's very much, as you were saying, like it puts her into this situation where she has no choice but to act, even though she would prefer not to act. So it is a good chance for character development, but it's not really necessary. It feels
forced again. Like, yeah. I don't think the writer knows how to make a genuine character development.
I did think it was cute when they were like making the like anti-poster posters together, though. That was really cute. I thought it was really cute. Sure, really didn't like it.
It just felt like that was like there to justify having the posters be in there. It just felt... It just didn't feel like it was like a natural character development.
Like the cat, though. They get a cat and they're like, oh, we're going to give the cat back to its owner. We've just been looking after it. And then the mum comes home and it's like, oops, I have a kitten now. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much what I would do. If we fostered a dog, I'd be like, oh no, we have our own dog.
That out of the whole thing felt the most genuine. That whole cat.
I loved
the whole cat subplot.
That was so cute.
And the kitten, that was very cute.
Should we go on to book 8? Wranglestone by Darren Charlton. Book 8.
This is a post-apocalyptic, but like quite a bit after. It's about you skip the like, oh, it's happened, let's struggle to survive. It's a couple of years later, like when there's a little civilization. It's like they're trying to rebuild civilization.
Yep, there's zombies, and there's a gay relationship.
Yeah.
And it's cute.
Yeah.
I liked the ship. The ship is really sweet.
The ship is quite sweet. It's quite tropey though, unfortunately.
It is very tropey, but
there's this thing that's like so stupid that happens so early on. They're having a meeting in the cabin about because our narrator, Peter, yes, A boat canoes up. A kayak canoe. Wait, a boat comes up, and the guy's like, "Oh, you have a snowflake, but that's okay. I'll just take your thing, smack you on the head." He's like, "Oh, I didn't. Post-apocalyptic world. You'd think growing up in it that you should be wary of all strangers."
That's the whole point, though. He hasn't interacted with any strangers. That's why they're like, "You have to go into the greater world, Peter. You are too naive."
Yeah. So their response to that is when they have the meeting, like, "We have a weak link." No, we don't. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, he shoots into the ceiling. We've already established a couple of times that the zombies are attracted to sound.
Noise, yeah.
To noise. And he shoots into the ceiling. And then they're like, 2 minutes later, they're like...
Oh, there's a horde.
There's a little girl like, "Oh, the stars are falling." And I was like, "What do you mean you're being silly?" And they look over and they see people that are camping on the hill and stuff. They get attacked by a horde. And they're like, "How did this horde get here? Where's the horde coming from? How is this happening?" Like, you literally... You come on, like, not even 2 minutes in book time had passed. Like, maybe like a minute. And you've suddenly forgotten that a guy just shot his gun into the ceiling when there was a noise, and zombies are attracted to noise.
I do wonder whether it's meant to be a discussion about the selfish nature of survival. Because like, they know those people are there, but at this point, they're on the little islands. So there's little islands in a lake. And the people...
Wranglestone.
Lake Wranglestone.
Yeah.
Camp Wranglestone. And the people live on the little islands. And then when it comes to winter, the lake ices over. And then the zombies can get across the ice to them. So that's where they say, at this meeting, it's like the end of summer. It's just about to start freezing. So they're saying like, right, from now on, children can't play outside. We can't make noise because they might get to us. But like, he makes that noise, not thinking about the fact that there's another campsite on the mainland that might get that horde, because he's like, "Oh, well, it's still watery around us. There's still no ice. We're safe. Doesn't really matter." Like, "Oh, if it was in 2 weeks when we've had the big freeze, I wouldn't be shooting my gun, but I want your attention and I don't care." So I do think it is about, like, the selfish nature of survival of, like, you wouldn't think, like, "Oh, no, I don't want to risk bringing zombies to those people." It's just like, "Hey, no one's listening to me. Bang. Oh, well, they're dead, but at least we're still fine because our water's not frozen."
Whenever they reference the big freeze, it just made me think of the board game Dead by Winter, or Dead Till Winter.
I'd not heard this, but Sean did say that it was quite similar to this.
It just, whenever it was like, oh yeah, like, because it's like surviving in winter and you have to like travel across, and the snow affects like your little meeples things and abilities. That's what they call the little wooden meeples.
It's still cute though.
It was still a good book though.
I just don't know why I couldn't get into it.
No.
I just had this massive disconnect. It got to the stage where I was reading a page out loud to Sean, and I got to the bottom of the page and I had to like scan it again and reread it in my head because none of it was going in. There's something about the writing style that just completely baffles me, and I don't know why, but some of the sentences, I knew what Darren Charlton was trying to say, but the way that he was saying it just made no sense to me. It was like I was reading a translated book that had gotten a little bit garbled, and I don't know if that's because we were reading an advanced copy of it. I don't know if there was some stuff, because we had this one through NetGalley. I don't know if it's because of the fact that it was an advanced copy, if things might have gotten changed later in the process, and because we already had the advanced copy, I thought we would read that one instead of purchasing a finished copy. I don't know if that was the problem. I really enjoyed Peter's character. I enjoyed the world. I thought that it was something that I'd read before, but trying to think of this from a young adult perspective, most of the books that I've read like this before have been aimed at adults. They've been adult horror. Like Warm Bodies, it might read like a teen book, but it is technically an adult horror book. But with the kind of zombies coming back to life, people die and then they come back to life, but they're not us, but they're not them.
That made it very much feel like it was like a Warm Bodies
twist. But if you try and think of it from the perspective of like, we're 25, we've read books like this before. Young adult readers who are young adults that these books are actually aimed at, this might be their first example of that genre. So it is a nice entry point. And I do think that Darren Charlton does add a unique spin to it, because out of all of the books I've read where the zombies kind of come back but they're not the same, I've never read any with a gay relationship. So it's great to have that representation in there. It's nice to see an addition to this genre that is LGBT. And I, like, props to Darren Charlton for that. I loved that aspect of it. There was just something in the writing that just didn't click with me. Yeah. I'm excited to read the sequel. I still want to read the sequel. And I think that if I read Wranglestone again before we read the sequel, it might click and I might enjoy it more second time around. But this one just left me feeling a bit deflated. I just had a big meh feeling about this one, which was a shame because it was the one I was most excited about.
Okay. Yeah, I go back to the warm bodies thing. Like, there's this twist where they have the old guide comes back to the camp, and they kill him because like, oh, it's a zombie. But then what's his name? Douglas.
Who are you trying to?
The one that dies and comes back to life.
Cooper.
Don't
Dougie.
know where I got that from.
Hey, Dougie.
Yeah, got maybe. Yeah, the twist with Cooper coming back to life was a bit of a twist. But I thought the more interesting twist was the outside military guy was just the doctor and
the head of the camp.
Yeah, the camp, one of the founders of the camp, tricking everyone in the camp that the outside world still existed. And it was also his way of maintaining control over the situation, which I thought was a better twist and more interesting twist than just the dead guy comes back to life, because that felt a lot more unique.
Yeah, and I also think that was the thing I didn't see coming. There were some other bits where it was Peter finds a guy called Ryder, and he is another one of the Return, and he's trying to get back to Yellowstone where his family are. And I said to Sean, I wonder if it's this, and this. And Sean's like, oh yeah, maybe. And then it's like the next chapter, or a couple of chapters later, that he's like, let me tell you more about our history. It's this, and this. And I was like, oh wow, I actually kind of figured it all out. And I don't know if that's proof that I was taking in more than I thought I was, whether there was more foreshadowing through it that I'd picked up on without knowing. Yeah. Or whether it is just quite formulaic. It's hard to sum that up. But again, like, it's adding something new to the genre, so it does make sense that it would be recycling a few of those old plot points with this new kind of layer to it. So I'm not taking points away from it because it does feel like it's been done before, because again, like, that's one of the problems with being an older reader reading this shortlist, trying to put yourself into the lens of who the actual audience are.
Yeah, but I do appreciate the fact that there was no like, oh, the apocalypse has come, everyone's dead, let's find survival. It just you jump like, straight in. People I can't remember his name.
Peter.
No, the writer.
The writer, Darren Charlton.
He's like, yeah, there's so many. It's not, the zombie world is basically oversaturated at this point, a bit like vampires were when after Twilight came out.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't need that. I could just skip that because people know what's going on with zombies.
Which is kind of the opposite to what René Adier did. Because he's like, oh, zombies. Like, we don't need to do the build-up to the zombies, we just need to have the zombies. And then René Adier was like, oh, we'll do all the build-up to the vampires, and then, surprise, vampires. Yeah. Like, all we really needed was just the vampires.
That was...
Oh, no!
Not a fan of René Adier.
Now I can see why you didn't like that one and you like this one more. Because I liked that more than this, because I liked the build-up. So again, that's like the difference between our writing preferences.
Isn't that one of the reasons why you don't not be a fan of the zombie series by Darren Chan? Because it's so slow and it's like, oh, everything's happening.
Well, no, it's more like it just doesn't need to be split into that many books.
True.
I just think it's a massive cash grab. Anyway, back to the prize. Should we go on to book 9?
Yes.
9 is Hold Back the Tide by Melinda Salisbury.
So this one fits quite well with your René Adier thing. This is possible vampire / mer creatures have been infesting the lock.
Yeah.
And the narrator's dad knows about it, and as possibly one of the greatest opening paragraphs.
Alva. You've forgotten her name.
I want to call her alias.
The narrator.
That's possibly one of the greatest opening paragraphs, because she thinks her dad killed her mother, which is like interesting. Like, living was rule 1 of living with a murderer.
Yeah,
that's like such a.
The first chapter is peak. It's just like, here are the 5 rules for living with a murderer. And it's like, oh my god, what is going on? Like, I loved it.
Well, see, we can spoil this. We're assuming for it at this point. The mum isn't actually dead. She's one of these
creature things.
Mer vampires.
I can't remember what the actual. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right because I can't speak Scottish, but I believe it was the Olanfuil. Because the dad was the Namfiel.
I'll give you my honorary Scottish pronunciation card.
Namfiel. I don't know. He was like the keeper of the lock, and they're like the lock gods.
Oh, they were once.
It was the actual. It was like blood drinker. I think was what it
was the direct
translated to. Yeah.
But they were like. Was like civilization, like as a mythical civilizations, the old enemies have just been lost through time. The people start to worship them.
Yeah, they think that they're gods.
Yeah, because they just had this power, and then obviously that civilization crumbles, and you have the remnants and the gods themselves, or the blood drinkers themselves.
I am conflicted by this one.
I like vampires. So
I loved the story so much without the supernatural aspect. I think need a supernatural aspect.
I think as much as I love vampires, and like vampires are like make it more popular, I think it could have done without them. It could have stood on its own two legs as like a somewhat semi-coming of age. Your dad's a murderer, living in such
historical story.
Yeah, living in such a tiny little town. Because there's a bit which I thought was quite nice. Well, they reference they had to keep birth records and marriage records going back loads of times, so because they were such an isolated little village in the like the Highlands.
Yeah, to make sure they didn't inbreed.
Yeah,
too much.
I thought that was like a nice little
that's
like a really nice little touch about how small and how close knit communities used to be.
There's something special about this one. There's the writing style is amazing. The writing is amazing. It feels like it's going to be one of those books that becomes a classic in the future. Like this, I feel like if this had been published in America, because UK YA never does as well as American YA, which still annoys me. If this had been published by an American author or in America, if it had had like a big push, it would have been like the biggest release of last year easily. And it frustrates me.
If it could get over there, if it get closer to that, it would be a huge.
Yeah.
It could be the vampire revival that
Running Addy tried to do.
What should have been.
Yeah. I already love Melinda Salisbury's writing. I already love Melinda Salisbury as a person.
It's my first book.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised that I loved it, but it gave me that excited feeling that I wanted to find in at least one of these books. This was the one that gave it to me. Other years I've had that from one or two books, but this was the one that gave me that I don't want to put this down. This is something really special. I absolutely adored it.
Yeah. Our main Ava?
Alva
is running away. Obviously, she thinks her dad's a murderer. To a city to become a.
No, she's going to like a small because everybody would expect that she would go to Inverness, so she's going like the other way. Like she's going to like another it's a town, but it's still
but she's going to like be a writer,
scribe.
That's the word. And like it's like she's like so much. There's like so much prep, but it's not really that. That's not really the focus. She's like, oh, I have a plan. But there's something about the way it's described which makes it not a huge focus. And her getting the gun and talking to the guy she gets the gun from, and like her relationship to him felt really actually quite genuine. Okay. Which I think a lot of which basically every book on this list didn't have that like genuine, realistic connection between the characters.
Well, I will admit this one made me cry at the end.
It's such a cathartic release if ever I've known one.
Yeah, it just got to the end and I was like, oh no, that can't be it. Like literally just my eyes just like, oh, like let's weep a little bit. And so it's definitely the only one that made me cry. And The Stars Are Burning Brightly nearly did the first time I read it, but this one really got me in my feels. Really powerful, proper gut punch.
Yeah, and you could sort of I like how it kind of describes the like arrogance of the guy's dad. Giles, yeah.
Giles Stewart.
Yeah, like his arrogance, and he's like, oh no, I'm smart. I know better than these people that have lived here for ages. Like, my money and my power.
Yeah, like, your job is to look after the lock, but I don't care that that's your job because I know better.
Yeah, like, I know better because I have money and power.
I'm gonna lock-splain to you. Because mansplain is when, like, the guy tells the girl, because they're like, I know better than you because I'm a man. But he's like, I'm going to lock-splain. I'm going to splain your own lock to you.
I'm going to gatekeep your own thing.
Yeah. Like, it's pathetic, but it's very realistic. Like,
yeah, I felt like the fact that he was just trying to, like, he thought he knew better because he was, not only did he have, like, all the power, but he was so driven against the dad.
Yeah.
So much that he was like blind to any sort of reason.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite a strong characterization of him.
Yeah. Very realistic, very relevant to now, because there's so many people who, like, you're automatically against their point of view just because you don't like them as a person. So you can't even really listen to what they're saying anymore.
Or you don't like a thing that they might have done without having any
Yeah,
knowledge
so
of the
that's an interesting discussion for nowadays, particularly through, like, the lens of politics and things. So I think that's an interesting discussion to bring to young people to say, like, look, just because you've got, like, this preconceived agenda against somebody, it doesn't mean that that's necessarily gonna guide you correctly.
Like don't hate your neighbour without actually getting to know your neighbour. That's
Yeah.
kind of like the thing.
Yeah.
I like the devastation of the town. I'm interested in the character lives happen afterwards. I really want it to be like a little novella, or even like a World Book Day type thing. That just like what happens to their lives after they've defeated these monsters, because they defeat them, but we don't know if they actually defeat them for a long time, because they basically blow up the cave.
Trap them in there.
Yeah, trap them in the cave, but it's based on like the water level. So like, I wonder how they're going to resolve that.
I do find it funny that Sean's saying that, though, because currently Melinda Salisbury has written a duology, and this is her first standalone. So it would be very fascinating if she did decide to revisit this in the future, because as an author who is used to writing stories with a sequel in mind, she might have more for this world that she's planned out just in case that is something that people want. And I hope, like, I would absolutely love it if she decided to revisit this world, because there's so much potential, and the characters, even though some of the characters aren't on the page for very long, you still get a very strong sense of them. And it would be interesting to see how they dealt with this fallout.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see how it all dealt with, and if there's like any other lock creatures, or like any other like the Scottish myths. Like,
that kind of come to pass. Yeah.
Even though I'm not a huge fan of retellings, I actually quite like this one because it didn't feel like it was trying to cash in on the fact that it was a retelling. Yeah,
it's not a very commonly known story. If it is based in mythology, I'm assuming that it is. But it's not a very commonly known mythology, and it's shining the light on something that people might not know about, which is awesome. Again, same reason that I enjoyed Cane Warriors, because it's doing something different.
Should we go to book
10?
Book 10.
Which is Loveless by Alyce Oseman.
Yeah, this was a reread.
For both of us.
I don't know. This book I have mixed feelings on.
I liked it more on a reread.
Yes, I liked it more on a reread. It felt like it was going a lot quicker on a reread.
Yes. I struggled to get into it the first time around because
pacing,
it was very slow.
Its pacing is a bit all over the place.
I don't know if it's necessarily slow or whether I would describe it more as intimate, because it's very focused on Georgia and her first year at university. So it's so focused on that like when you're in your first year at university, there's not really all that much going on. You're meeting new people, you're going to lectures, you're getting drunk, you're going to parties and stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, like, there's not all that much happening. Like, you're discovering who you are, and you're meeting these new people, and you're discovering who you are out of the kind of place that you've grown up and where you've always lived. But there's only so much interest that you can get from a story like that.
Yeah.
Which is why I feel like the first time around I just wanted more from it. This time around, because I knew what I was expecting, I enjoyed it more.
Yeah, it's... Even though they went to a university that's meant to be really different to where they grew up, I didn't really get a sense of the whole university. You could have just told me that they went to college.
Okay.
That their local college, like their local sixth form, it didn't really feel like it was like a fish out of water type.
Yeah, you don't really get any descriptions of what the lectures are like. You get that the Rooney and Georgia are sat next to each other in lectures, they're making notes on their iPad. But for me, when I went to university, one of the things that I found the most kind of surprising was the lectures, because you've got like the rows of seats that are like rising up, and you've got the teacher at the front.
Very
and
auditorium.
Auditorium. And it's very different to the experience that you get in college, in sixth form, in secondary school. And I would just expect Georgia to be commenting on things like that more.
The only reference that it's not to the place is the weather, how cold it is, and there's like all these like cute little towns, cute little packed together houses.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay.
I will say, I think this is the winner. Not my winner personally, but I will eat my sock if this doesn't win the Way Book Prize.
Don't eat my sock, it's got a hole in it, going a bit anyway.
Your sock smells.
It's got a lovely hole in it if you can see it.
Oh, I don't want to eat your sock, Sean.
Yeah, you do.
I will eat my sock, because when we first finished this in September, I said we've just read the Book Prize winner. Before it was on the shortlist, before the date for the blooming entries was even announced.
Yeah.
I was like, we just read the winner.
Yeah,
And I stand by that. Having read the rest of them, I stand by it because this stands out from the rest of the UKYA scene. Not just looking at it in the lens of the Book Prize shortlist. This is basically the only UKYA book that's focused on asexuality, and it's the only time I've ever seen the word aromantic on the page in a YA novel. And it's brilliant because people deserve to be represented. And books like this need to be written so that teenagers can discover themselves, because a character like Georgia, who is going to university, she's like, oh, I've never had a kiss, I've never really felt attracted to anybody, there must be something wrong with me. If this book can help people who feel the same to understand that they're not alone and to understand that there's nothing wrong with them, it's just their sexuality. It's a genuine sexuality, and it's a realistic, not choice, because obviously it is the way that you feel, you don't choose to feel that way, but it is realistic for you to say, like, actually romance isn't for me, I don't want to date anybody, I'm not attracted to guys or girls, I just don't feel that. And it's going to help people. That is what I think is most important to me. And that's exactly why last year's YA Book Prize shortlist, I chose The Places I've Cried in Public by Holly Bourne, because that's about domestic abuse, and that will really help people who are in those situations to feel like they're not alone and to feel like they can get help and that things are not as bad as they seem. I'm surprised that it didn't win for that reason, and that's why I'm like, oh no, what if Loveless doesn't win, because it gives me a lot of the same vibes as Places, and Places didn't win.
I think the best part of Loveless is the whole conversation that she eavesdrops on with her parents and
Auntie and uncle. Auntie and uncle and her cousin.
Yeah, I think that is like a really good, like, if you read that in isolation, that is like better than the whole book. Like, you didn't need the whole book, you could just have that as like an extract.
Like, it could be a short, like a novella rather than an actual novel.
Yeah, I think that was like a really interesting, because it's not just one character's tale, and it also, because the cousin is early 30s.
Yeah, early to mid 30s.
It actually sort of explains like what it's like now. You've like sort of missed the like happening of the gender identity awakening that's happened in the past 2 or 3 years. Like,
oh yeah, if you're older and like people
not...
are just kind of discovering terms like asexuality, demisexuality. If you're older and you've missed that, like how you feel within yourself.
I kind of want to read that story more.
That would be interesting.
Because we read, when we first went to the house, we read Insomniac City.
Yes.
And that is about, I can't remember their names, Oliver and...
Oh, it's Oliver Sacks and his partner, I think his name's Bill.
Yeah, it's about them. But they obviously missed a lot of their like...
They like on the shelf down here.
I don't know. I don't think it is. I think it's upstairs. But we missed... They missed like the like gay awakening that was happening because they were just too old. Especially Oliver.
Yeah.
And like he just felt never need to dress it. He's like, yeah, I know what I am. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
I felt like that was like a really nice
memoir.
It kind of makes me want to read. Like, I want to read Alyce's
story.
Yeah. I would be interested in seeing like having Alice's story, but also having George's bit in it.
So like if it was a dual timeline, dual perspective, that would have been interesting because.
Or just like these like weird event movies, like the ones like the Steve Jobs thing, and it's like little events like cut together. Like I would want like Alyce being younger, and then Alyce like meeting George. She's like, oh, I think she might be like me, and then obviously George at university having that conversation was the whole overhearing at the McDonald's, and then like in the future after George is graduated,
how she then develops.
How they develop
that
like
would
together
be really interesting.
Because like other than Ravi, is that his name? The Pride Sock leader?
Sunil.
Sunil.
You're thinking of Ravi from Good Girls Guide to Murder.
Yeah.
Pip's boyfriend.
Yeah. Other than him, there's no other asexual there's no other people like that she interacts with. Obviously, he's so similar to her because he's also a college student, and he
also likes theatre. He's also kind of got the same interests.
Yeah, and he doesn't even go off to live his life. He decides to do a 4th year and do a PhD or a master's.
Masters.
Yeah. So like, I kind of want to know what it's like outside of the like
university,
like outside of like the like growing, the like education aging up system. I want to hear that story more.
I do think it will be interesting to see how publishing shifts towards telling stories like this more, because there was so much hype around Loveless when it was released, because it was like the first book in which asexuality was properly explored and represented, and that's the main reason that I think this deserves to win the Way Book Prize, because it's a very brave story to tell. Because it might not have sold, people might not have been interested, but instead it really helped a hell of a lot of people, and it's already helped a lot of people even within the first year. I know there are other bloggers that I follow. Yeah, you've given it as a gift, and there are bloggers that I follow who were like literally weeping when they finished this book because they finally felt like they've been seen for the first time, and
I can't relate to that, but yeah, I can imagine.
No, but then you're not asexual, so you feel like that.
You feel like the whole like feeling valid, but like like the whole like you aren't alone. Yes,
exactly. That's an important thing. It's so important, and so I might not love the story. I think that it is a bit slow. I really like the characters. I would happily read more from these characters. I find it interesting. I think this is not only the longest book on the shortlist. I think this is actually Alyce Oseman's longest book so far.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting because having read all of her books, this is the one with like the tightest frame. It's so intensely focused on Georgia at university, whereas her other novels have a lot of subplots and a lot of different stories going on, and they're shorter. So I find it interesting that this is obviously a topic that she was very passionate about. This was a topic that she wanted to explore to the maximum so that she could have the biggest impact, which is why it was so long. But I'm interested to see in a couple of years' time, like, what other authors also address this.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So the way that we've decided to choose our winner is that we've each done our list from 10 to 1. And we're giving 10th place 1 point, 9th place 2 points, 8th place 3 points, 7th place 4 points, 6th place 5 points, 5th place 6 points, 4th place 7 points, but then it's similar to Eurovision. 3rd place gets 10 points.
Yeah.
2nd place gets 12 points. And 1st place gets 15 points. So, adding up together will be how we choose our winner. But we will also let you know our individual ratings. As though this is a judging panel. And we have collaborated together to come to the overall book.
Give us though next year, if we can like try and organise with some other booktubers.
Oh, that would be really fun.
Like a live show, that'd be really cool.
Oh, that would be really fun.
If anyone else has read the book prize, if you could tag them below, or like
if you would be interested in reading it, let us know.
Because that'd be really cool to just like have like a panel, because obviously with 2 of us it's going to be sort of skewed quite a bit probably.
Yeah, I don't think my winner's going to win. Are we ready?
I don't think mine's going to win either.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
In 10th place for me, I've got the Great Godden with 1 point.
I also have the Great Godden with 1 point.
So the Great Godden gets a whapping 2 points. It's definitely in 10th place.
Yeah.
In 9th place, with 2 points.
You've forgotten.
I have Cane Warriors by Alex Wheatle.
I have Melt My Heart.
Okay, this is what I was expecting. I knew we would agree on Great Godden last, though. I knew that. In 8th place with 3 points, I have Wranglestone.
I have 8 Pieces of Silver.
Okay.
I mean, you can kind of see how I...
Yeah.
You can see my taste and how I relate to books a lot quite clearly at this point.
In 7th place with 4 points, I have 8 Pieces of Silver.
I have Cane Warriors.
Oh, okay. So there's a similar kind of books coming up. I'll add them up together at the end because I can't do it in my head. I was just going to be like, oh, okay, so we've got that and that and that, but we'll just do that at the end.
Yeah.
In 6th place with 5 points, I have Loveless.
In 6th place, I have Snowfall.
Snowfall of Silver?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to come higher on yours.
Yeah.
In 5th place with 6 points, I have Good Girl Bad Blood.
In what place?
5th place.
5th place, yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah. In 5th place, I have Loveless.
Okay, so again, similar in the middle.
Yeah.
In 4th place with 7 points, I have And the Stars Were Burning Brightly.
In 4th place, I have Wranglestone.
Okay. In 3rd place with 10 points, I have Hold Back the Tide.
In In third place with 10 points, I have The Stars Were Burning Bright. Blah, 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 blah.
And the stars were burning brightly.
And The Stars Were Burning
Bluntly.
Yeah, alright. Yeah, next one.
I love you. In second place,
it's going to be important ones.
with 12 points, I have a Snowfall of Silver.
In second place, I have Hold Back the Tide.
And in first place, with 15 points, I have Melt My Heart.
In first place, I have Good Girl, Bad Blood.
I did not expect that to be your first.
I was really torn between Good Girl and Hold Back the Tide.
I was really torn between Hold Back the Tide and Melt My Heart.
I think because I've reread Good Girl's Bad Blood, I rated it high because I enjoyed it more on the second read. And I think if I reread Hold Back the Tide, I think I'd rate that higher.
I think that the reason I didn't put Good Girl Bad Blood higher was because I'd reread it, because I didn't have as much of the impact second time around. I rated it higher because when we first read it, I didn't give half-star ratings.
I've given mine is slightly different because I've given all mine star ratings. I based it off on the star ratings. I think that might not have been the best way to
see. I haven't done it off of star ratings.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I have or not.
Interesting.
Tell me your star ratings. I will figure mine out while you're telling me them.
Good Girl Bad Blood is a 5-star.
See, it's 4.5 for me. When we first read it, I didn't give half-star ratings, so I gave it a 4 because I didn't like it as much as A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but it's not a 4, so it has to be a 4.5.
Hold Back the Tide, I gave 5 stars. And The Stars Were Burning Brightly. Nailed it. I gave 5 stars. Wranglestone, I gave 4.5.
That was a 3 for me.
Loveless, I gave 4.5.
Gave it 3.5 first time around. I think it bumped up to 4.
Snowfall, I gave 4. It was like 4.2. Like an extra.
Okay.
Cane Warriors, I gave 3.5.
That was a 3.5 for me as well, I think. Or 3.
8 Pieces of Silver, I gave 3.5. But I think I might round that down, maybe.
Okay.
Melt My Heart, I gave 2.5. And Great Godden, I gave 2.
I gave it 2 as well.
Yeah.
I know for a fact I gave... See, because I haven't completely decided mine yet, because it's hard to quantify it. I think for me, Cane Warriors and Wranglestone are both 3s.
Okay.
But then, like, a 3-star rating is still a good rating.
Oh, yeah, like...
That means that in this entire shortlist, there's one book that's less than 3 stars, and that's Great Godden for me. So that's really good still.
Any book above 3 stars, any book, TV show, film above 3 stars, I'll recommend it because it was still a good thing. It just wasn't to my taste. Like, it's still worth picking up 3.5, 4, 4.5s.
So for me, I'm giving Great Godden 2 stars. Cane Warriors and Wranglestone both 3 stars. 8 Pieces of Silver and Loveless, I'm giving both 4 stars. Good Girl Bad Blood and The Stars Are Burning Brightly, 4.5 stars, both bumped up from 4 stars first time I read them. And Hold Back the Tide, A Snowfall of Silver and Melt My Heart, they don't feel like 5 stars, but they don't feel like 4.5 stars either. So I think I'm just going to give them 5 stars because I'm being too strict with myself because we've hardly read any 5-star books this year. But in a normal year, they would be 5 stars. I think it's just because we've been reading books that aren't as good. These are a lot better than those, but they still don't feel perfect. And this is why we need to have a 10-point ratings. I need to learn core pile.
You need a 20 pile.
Yeah.
I don't think core pile would not work.
I'm going to give them all 5 stars because I've got tiny little problems with all of them, but not enough to make them 4s and not enough to ruin my enjoyment of them. Yeah, let's do it. That explains why I was feeling so conflicted on those because I mean from 10 to 4 was easy for me to place. I will now add up the points quickly.
So the main takeaway from this that I've learned is we need a more progressive scoring system because 5 points isn't enough and 10 points isn't really enough. Maybe I don't know if 20 points would be enough. Maybe somewhere in between because 100 points just seems ridiculous.
100 points does seem ridiculous.
Yeah. Because like, what's the difference between like a 92 and a 93? Like, you tell me, like, that'd be such a small difference. So maybe a 20-point system might work a bit better. Because you obviously get the half and the half. You get the halves of the halves.
I was thinking the other day, like similar to Core Pal, you could do like a rating system.
Yeah, you have to.
Like,
you have
like
to do
A would be for atmosphere, T would be for. I know I had like a whole
Yeah.
Had a whole thing like that. Like, I would be for, like, imaginativeness.
Yeah, I wouldn't personally use core pile because lots of the things...
You've done yours, like, 10 to 1.
Yeah.
I've done mine 10 to 1, so it's really hard for me to, like, add up.
Like, things like core pile and a lot of the other ones, they exist in, like, they expect each part of the, like, rating system to be, like, in a vacuum, but they're not. They're inside the whole thing of the story, so a lot of them would just be, like, for me, it'd be like, oh, 10, 10, 10, because obviously in the context of the story, and the micro-universe it creates in the story in the book, it makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like, books where, like, the kids are main characters, and, like 7 and 8 year olds just running around, like, there's no adults. Like, yeah, that makes sense in the world, but it doesn't make sense in the real world, so obviously that's where these things break in my head, and that's probably why I've worn Alyce down with them.
I'm sorry this is taking me so long to figure out. I should have told you to do it 10 to 1. Yeah, if we just stop and then I'll carry on figuring out. So, without further ado, our prize list.
Our scores are in.
In 10th place.
If you've been adding along, you probably know what we've already scored without having to work it out.
With 2 points.
Is a surprising to nobody is Great Godden.
Great Godden. In 9th place with 6 points is Cane Warriors by Alyce Sweetle.
Yeah. I don't have these things, so I don't know why you're like, sure, look, tell me them. Oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
In 8th place with 7 points
is 8 Pieces of Silver.
Which is appropriate because 8. Yeah. In 7th place with 10 points
is Wranglestone.
In 6th place with 11 points
is Loveless, which we think will be the
actual winner.
Actual
it's not our personal winner, but we think it's the actual winner. In joint 3rd place with 17 points.
It's interesting. So we have At the Stars Are Burning Brightly, A Snowfall of Silver, and Melt My Heart, all in joint 3rd place.
All in joint 3rd place, so also simultaneously joint 4th and 5th.
Yeah.
They're all the same.
Well, that's quite interesting, because we rated those quite dramatically different, I think.
Yeah, but they all still ended up being like solid 3rd places. Yeah. In 2nd place with 21 points
is Good Girl, Bad Blood.
And in 1st place with 22 points, literally just pipping it to the post,
is Hold Back the Tide, which I'm really happy with, because I was conflicted about my Good Girl and Hold Back the Tide.
And I'm really happy with too, because I was conflicted about Melt My Heart and Hold Back the Tide.
Yeah.
So that is the right winner, because we were both weren't sure whether to make it first, and it is.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yay!
So it does work, even though the system feels like if you start winning, you're just going to win a lot.
No. I was inspired by Eurovision.
Yeah.
I know it's not exactly how Eurovision do it, but I know they always give like dramatic points and then it goes slowly down.
It'd be really interesting if we had someone who like gave 15 points to like Great Godden. And, like,
because then that would also be 3rd place.
It'd be huge. No, because they'd also rank their other things.
True.
So, like, I think having a 3rd or 4th person. If anyone wants to join, we'll be more than happy to let you.
Desperate for friends.
I'm desperate for reading friends. None of my friends read.
Oh. What am I?
Well, you're my girlfriend. You're not a real friend.
Fine.
Or
Fair
actually,
enough.
no. All my friends that do read just read high fantasy or historical fiction.
Raph.
Yeah. Or they just read like
Lord of the Rings.
Over
and over.
Like the classics like 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit, all those sorts of books.
But yes, so thank you so much for coming on this ridiculously long journey with us. We hope that you have enjoyed this video. Please let us know if you have read the Way Book Prize shortlist, who your winner is down below. The prize winner is being announced on, I believe, the 4th of... Can you flip the calendar over? It's not going to be the 4th. It's going to be the 7th, I think. It's the Thursday. 6th?
It's not on there.
Just going to check. Oops. Oh no, I've got airplane mode on. Heck. I've messed up, Sean.
Is it on that calendar?
No.
Oh.
Oh, I've just had a voicemail. What's happening? That'll be the one from Grandad on my birthday. That's fine. Or did I listen to that? It's fine. YA Book Prize 2021. Oh no, I've got to go on their Instagram because that's the only place I've actually seen the date. Please cut all this out.
I will.
Whoops. Alyce is a failure.
We're so close.
Oh, I've got the internet works on that other phone and that's the one I've got Instagram on. I'm so stupid.
It's okay, at least Instagram works online.
Is it this one? So the winner is announced on Thursday the 6th of May. So if you're interested in finding out who the winner is, make sure to check the Way But Prize social media at some point during that day. It's normally in the early afternoon. I don't know this year because it's not happening at Hay Festival, because Hay Festival isn't happening unless they're doing an online thing. But either way, Thursday the 6th of May. So yes, thank you for watching, and we hope that you enjoyed this video. If you would like to subscribe, we would be super duper grateful. And if you'd like to like this video, then please do. We post new videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. They're normally a bit shorter than this one.
Yeah, but again, congratulations to
Hold Back the Tide.
Hold Back the Tide for winning our
Way But Prize.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
and
congrats.
also preemptive congratulations to Loveless, because you've got this in the bag.
Do you reckon?
Yes, I'm gonna eat my sock. I'm gonna eat my sock.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, let us know down below if you agreed with our list, or if you make your own list and they are dramatically different. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
We could just add them all up.
If you love the Great Godden, we're sorry.
Yeah, like from the time of posting this to the actual we could just like work it all out and then do a post on Instagram, like our community rates books, and we add it all together.
Could be
That
fun.
could be quite cool.
Could be fun. So if you have read any of these, please leave your ratings down below.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time. Bye!
What?
I know this is gonna happen.
Yeah. Should we have a high five this time? There we go.
Yeah.